Hello, I'm Matt Singer. I'm the Arts and Culture Editor at Willamette Week, and my guest today is Andrew Tolman. They are a American Sign Language interpreter and the founder of Fingers Crossed Interpreting. And Andrew, maybe I'll let you kind of start out here by kind of giving the mission statement for Fingers Crossed, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah. Actually, the official mission statement of Fingers Crossed, I would say, has yet to be determined. It's sort of a shifting as the community needs thing, but our mission itself was born out of Occupy ICE PDX, out of Philip Wolf's city council campaigns, and a number of other actions around town that needed ASL interpreters but weren't really sure where to get them. So our goal is to provide accessibility as a means of inclusion, regardless of budget restrictions or any other, systematic restrictions.
So the sort of tagline on Fingers Crossed is "Revolutionize the Revolution."
Yeah.
Do you, do you feel like the deaf community was sort of overlooked to a certain degree within this kind of social justice advocacy world?
I would say that ableism, the discrimination against the disability community, is very prevalent just in general in our society. I don't think that it's specifically against, one side or the other. I would say that most groups and most movements right now just have inaccessibility and inherent ableism. I also have seen a push over the last few years of a lot of these movements to undo that and actively search for ways to engage the community that I don't necessarily see on right wing side or any other side, frankly. I think that people forget that disability and deafness, which are two separate things and can be discussed at a later time, but could intersect with any other identity. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, that means Black disabled lives matter and Black deaf lives matter. And when meetings and workshops and know your rights trainings and things are being held without engaging those communities, we're kind of just doing the same thing and building a new system, excluding a lot of intersections and forgetting a lot of intersections. And it's the sort of intent versus impact for sure as well. So I'm definitely wanting to call people out for saying things that they're involved in are revolutionary when they're very inherently ableistic. And if they're not prioritizing that, then that's a dialogue that we need to be having for sure.
Is interpreting for social justice events or rallies or protests, does it take a certain level, like a different skill set, I guess, as an interpreter? Or
Well, one thing to start off with that is that a lot of concepts that we're talking about, like capitalism, imperialism, um, a number of kind of big jargon words like that revolve in activist circles, don't have established sign language vocabulary. Oftentimes, we're having to sign around the concept or fingerspell it. Work with members of the deaf community to come up with a sign that may be appropriate. For example, actually, the other night we had deaf people that were hit physically by crowd control munitions, and the sign that we were using was this, which usually denotes like a gun and an actual firearm, and we didn't want that concept to be confused when we were sharing information later. So the group of us came up with like sort of a thicker gun sign that is not established and is not, no one else uses it, but in that moment and now in these circles we're using it to explain a phenomenon that doesn't really have a word. And so interpreters have to be able to understand conceptually what they're talking about and make that be as culturally competent in ASL, in deaf ASL, as we can. As second language users, that's very hard. I would also say another level of it is vicarious trauma and probably direct trauma as well, depending on their involvement. But we interpret for the families of people who have been murdered by the police here. We interpret for people who themselves are survivors of police brutality. I myself, interpreting, have experienced police brutality firsthand, and so the the movement of a story and the trauma to make it dynamically equivalent as an interpreter requires a level of empathy that we can't avoid. And when we are in the middle of a very tense escalation or a situation, we're sort of an empathy sponge and pulling in all of that. And interpreters, I think, need to be aware of that before they enter any space like this, that it's going to be heavy. And regardless of how you feel about one issue or the other, who you agree with or not, it's moving through your body and moving through your psyche. And I wouldn't say that all interpreters are called to do that in the same way that I wouldn't say all people belong on the front line.
Tell me a little bit about kind of what your experience has been like at these protests and kind of what your involvement is, because beyond I guess interpreting, I'm assuming that you are also interpreting for speakers and stuff like that that's happening, but you are also going down to the Justice Center, it seems like, and interpreting in a much less controlled environment. Can you tell me just a little bit about that and what the challenges are of that in like a such a chaotic situation?
I want to make sure that whatever is important for me and my sensory, for my safety, auditorily, that I'm trying to give that information. So I can hear when um, when certain crowd control munitions are being shot, even if it's not in our direction. I can hear the like the air cannon, like the I can hear it rebounding off of the fence. I can hear how far away the bang is. I can hear that the helicopter has now circled back over us and is no longer on the other side of town. I can hear the police giving instructions in general, saying this is a peaceful protest, into please don't touch the fence, into this is unlawful, into all the things that they say basically within 30 minutes. And none of that is accessible. There is clearly no consideration for accessibility at all, just period. They don't care if, frankly, it doesn't even feel like they care if someone can hear it or not. It's more for them to say that they can do it so that they can say, well, we tried and now we are going to beat the fuck out of people. Sorry, we're going to beat the crap out of people. And
Don't worry. We're on.
Okay, okay,
You
yeah.
can swear.
I'm like, I know that like editing, I want to like make sure. So as an interpreter, I'm listening for that escalation. I'm listening for the way that the crowd sounds as things are happening. I'm listening for how people are responding. If the cops say, for example, this is an unlawful protest, an unlawful gathering, remove yourself from the area, or you will be subject to arrest or use of force, including crowd control munitions. That's like tethered into my brain now because I've interpreted it so many times. I can hear the way that the crowd responds to that, whether or not they feel like they're going to listen, whether or not it feels like it's going to be an escalation, when that's going to happen. So we are not only interpreting the words but also the feel of the things that are going on around us.
Is that a it's a high pressure situation because it sounds like it puts a lot of responsibility on your back. Is that
Yeah.
a lot of pressure?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's pressure that I feel like I chose. I feel like anytime I'm in an action that way, I have, eyes 24 or at every hour, at my 6, 3, and 9, and I'm watching, comrades and protesters, especially because recently we've had so many new people. There
Mhm.
are so many people who are experiencing this for the first time, and because the deaf community is experiencing with them new together, there's kind of like a bond that happens as well. The pressure is not so much completely on me because now we have the NLG is now knowledgeable that deaf people are in the crowd, so they know that hey, do you have the number? I can write on your arm, and they know to gesture with them. Medics know, okay, deaf people are over here. If something happens, I'm going to keep an eye on them. People are signing the chants with us in solidarity. There's this whole sort of like community response that happens too, that I feel like while I do have a pressure, it's almost like a responsibility, a responsibility that I am willing to take on. And as we show up more and more, the community is sort of taking that on together.